Good morning. So, bit of a treat this morning, beautiful sunny day, and I am delighted to be joined by Sherilyn Shackell of the Marketing Academy. I know many of our listeners will be very, very familiar with you, and I'm really grateful. I know you travel a huge amount, so thank you for squeezing me in this morning. We've got some questions to go through, but before we do, it would be great, I think, if you don't mind, just if you'd be willing to give a bit of an overview about the Marketing Academy, because our audience is from head of marketing level. We've got people sort of starting out earlier in their marketing careers, all the way to the chief ofs, who many of whom have been through your fellowship program. But for people who may not either be familiar with it yet or are and haven't yet had the opportunity to take part, if you could share an insight into your world, I'd be really grateful.
Sure, okay. Well, the Marketing Academy is a place where all of the best marketeers in marketing, media and advertising get world-class development from a leadership perspective, from personal development perspective, and from skills. And we are quite an unusual organisation. Certainly we're the first of our kind. I'm not sure whether there's any other organisations still quite like us, as we launched 13 years ago, and ostensibly we operate at two different levels. So our programs are aimed at two different levels. So we have the scholarship program, which is aimed at the emerging leader level, so between 8 and 18 years experience. So they've got to have some leadership under their belt before they get on the scholarship. And in 3 countries now, we take a team of 30 scholars. So they go through a very rigorous selection process. We take a team of 30 of them through what is a 9-month program, probably about 15 days of time, where they have immersive boot camps that we pack with inspirational speakers, leadership development, personal development, etc. And then they get to meet mentors. They get to meet 8 mentors during their 9 months, and those mentors are all CEOs or CMOs and some subject matter experts. And they also get to work one-on-one with an executive coach. So we have this team of fabulous executive coaches around the world. There are 140 of them altogether, who all gift their time into the academy to develop the scholars. And then in between, they go on what we call our virtual campus program, which is online. Everything else is face-to-face and in person, and it just supplements their learning. They all get a place on the virtual campus. And so of that program, we've now got around 800 alumni around the world who have been nominated, got through the selection process and graduated from the program. We've just announced our 27th scholarship in the UK, which is our 14th scholarship in the UK. We've just announced who they are. And then at the top end, at the higher level, we run what we call the Marketing Academy Fellowship Program, which is exclusively for brand side CMOs. And that program is all about developing their capability in order that they can go on and become broader, wider CMOs. So to take on bigger roles within the C-suite, or to step from CMO to CEO, which is quite rare, but mostly because they're not usually seen as credible successors to the CEOs, and we don't believe that at all. So that's one trajectory. And then also developing their board capability so that they can get non-exec directorships or roles as advisors on boards, etc. So and we run that program in EMEA and in the US, along with the scholarship. We've just launched the fellowship in Asia Pac out of our Australian Marketing Academy. So we have 250 alumni of that around the world. And therefore our alumni base is just over 1,000. It's 1,050. And then we've got the virtual campus, which is actually for our community. So it's a 12-month rolling program of inspirational learning and well-being and leadership and self-mastery. But we created that as a gift back to the industry, who all gift us their time. So everyone in our community, our alumni, our mentors, our coaches, our speakers, our partners, they all get places to enroll their talent on that program. And it is free to them, totally free to them. And there are 8,500 people enrolled on that. And just a very quick shout out for your listeners, anybody that has been made redundant or is freelancing or is in career transition, they can get a golden ticket to enroll on that program completely free. So that's the only public element. You'll put in the link, and then anybody
we'll
can just
stick a link.
click the link. So that's what we're all about.
Wow, that's really very impressive, and that's clearly grown to quite some size now. What about, you mentioned about the selection process, and I know from speaking to people it's very rigorous. Are you able to give a little bit of an insight as to what someone can possibly expect from the selection process?
Yes, sure. So at the two levels, the selection process is slightly different. The scholars, it's longer and more competitive because obviously there's more of them at that level, so more people get nominated at that level. So for the scholarship, you have to be nominated first. You can't just apply. So someone who thinks and feels that you would, you deserve a place on the program would nominate you. Then you would receive an invitation to apply, and it's a 3-stage selection process. So you have to, for stage 1, send in your CV, an employer's endorsement, 600 words employer endorsement, and a 2-minute showcase me in any medium of your choosing, to tell us about who you really are in just 2 minutes. If you get through that stage, that's stage 1, you then go to what we call the pitch stage. So we have 25 of our alumni from across the last 13 years that interview at that second stage. That's a half-an-hour interview, and everybody gets the same questions. So it's quite short, but they get 10 minutes to pitch themselves, and then they're all asked the same questions. And then if they get through that stage, they then go face to face with a panel of 2 selection judges, and they are usually a CMO and an HR or resourcing officer, so that we can get the balance between the industry and then the selection capability. And that final selection panel will ultimately feed in the information we need to know in order for us to curate the final class of 30. So that's the scholarship. On the fellowship, it's a little bit different. The CMOs can self-apply because our criteria is very clearly stated, but they also have to supply us with an employer's endorsement. They have to fill out quite a detailed application form with some essay questions. And if they get through that stage, then they are also having a meeting with a selection panel that's made up of people from the Marketing Academy and also people from McKinsey, who are our partners on that program. So it's also selective. They're all selective, but they are totally free to attend, other than overnight accommodation at the boot camps for the scholars or the residentials for the fellows. They are delivered totally free of charge. One of the reasons for that, I'll often get questioned. We get questioned a lot more in the States about it being free than we do anywhere else.
They don't trust the fact that it's free.
Yeah, in the States, if it's free, it means it's not very good.
Yeah. And
I say it's free because, frankly, you couldn't afford it if it wasn't.
Yeah.
So because they are literally priceless. If we were to price it up, and we have done the exercise a couple of times. So I think one year we priced up all of the value of everybody that had contributed to a scholarship year, and it would have come out around £35,000 a head.
Yeah.
And the fellowship comes in at around 80,000 a head. So you can't charge. We wouldn't charge it. We wouldn't want to, because we run a highly selective process. So we want to be able to select the best, not just the people that a company feels they're going to give a little bit of money, they're going to give some money to, and that person can go on a course. It's just not like that. We need to be able to make the selection ourselves. So it's a very unusual model, and I still don't think it exists anywhere else.
Oh, I certainly haven't come across it, and from everybody that we work with, without a shadow of a doubt, candidates will say that this is the best experience they have ever had, and something that has set them up so well for their careers. So we'll put the links so people can go through. And I know you've just announced your recent scholarship intake. When's the next cycle, as it were? When's the next opportunity for new people to apply, or can they apply constantly for sort of?
No, they can't. In the UK, so in the UK, the scholarship applications and the fellowship applications are likely to open around June of this year for the 2024 cohorts. In the States, actually, the US scholarship is open for nominations right now. The fellowship program, we're just about to announce the new cohort of fellows in the US. In Australia, the APAC fellowship program is open right now. And the scholarship program in Australia will probably open also probably around about June, July time this year.
Okay, well, the timing of this is perfect then, because this will be released in time for people to be able to go online and have a look and apply. Thank you for giving an insight into that. I'm kind of, may I go through a few questions now?
Oh, of course.
Got a few,
ask me anything.
A few specific questions. So, you were a headhunter many years ago, prior to establishing the Marketing Academy, and you're clearly incredibly passionate about what you deliver. What inspired you to set it up in the first place? What was the inspiration behind the academy?
Well, there was so much that happened leading up to me setting up the academy. The first thing to tell you, so I am not a marketeer, never have been, and in fact my search firm wasn't a marketing search firm either. We did C-suite, so my clients were the CEOs, but we would work across all of the board functions. So I had been a headhunter for, well, most of all of my career up to that point, and this is going back 16 years ago. And I owned around my own search firm, and it was very successful, and it was quite sizable, and we'd managed it through a few recessions. And then when I found myself in my early 40s, so I'm 58 now, and I found myself in my early 40s, I had a very big, what they call in Australia, a tree change, or a sea change as we'd call it, in direction, because I got really ill, and I had an illness that could have killed me very quickly. So I wasn't suffering from anything, I just had this illness that could have killed me within 24 hours. And it took me quite a long time to recover from that. Physically, probably I was in intensive care for 3 weeks. It took probably about 6 months for me to become healthy, but it took me a lot longer than that to psychologically digest what had happened to me. And what that meant was I did a huge amount of introspection and self-reflection to figure out how I'd got myself there. And I'm a very big believer that the life that you lead will, the end result will be as a direct result of the type of life you lead. And I had not really recognized quite how unhappy I was in the industry I was in and in the job that I was doing. I believe the recruiting industry has changed and shifted quite a bit since then. But at that time, and in my early career, it was considerably more ruthless than I was ever comfortable with. It's highly commercial, used to be much more commercial, very sales orientated, and very high pressured. So I had grown up in an environment within recruiting where it was like working, on the phones on the stock market. It was really like being a trader. It was, really it was all target based. It was all go. It was all 15, 16-hour working days. And therefore, when I ultimately found myself leading my own search firm, I led in that way. And I'd never really taken the time to reflect on what I was doing and why I was doing it until I got ill. And I had to accept that, the lifestyle that I was leading, the stress, the anxiety I was feeling, the constant and relentless push for commercial success, whatever that looked like, the being on the treadmill of you get a little bit of money because you get a little bit of success, then you work a bit harder because you get more scared of losing it. It's the treadmill of doom and fear. And I was right in that. So working long hours, taking no holidays, and extremely anxious all the time. I remember that when one of my children was born, I have 3 of them. When one of them was born, I literally took 6 days off.
Oh, wow.
Okay. In those days, there wasn't even maternity leave, right? So I took 6 days out. I remember at one point cradling my newborn in my arm in the delivery room and my phone in the other hand, phoning into the office for the sales meeting. That's how I led, which is awful. So I'd been on the board of a leadership development company. They had really opened my eyes. This is just before my illness. They'd really opened my eyes to what true leadership was all about. I started to realize then that the way in which I was leading was wrong, but I couldn't see a way out of the industry I was in. And so when I did this period of self-reflection, I had to think about what am I really brilliant at? What puts light in my eyes? What things can I talk about for hours? What things, what when I'm in flow, what am I doing? What are the things that I love? What are the things that I'm passionate about? Because I knew I needed to get out of what I was doing. I knew I needed to change my life. It took a while. But one of the things I was always passionate about, and this is why it's the marketing academy and not any other kind of academy, because frankly, it could exist in any industry or sector.
Yeah.
But I had always been of the belief as a headhunter with my CEO clients that if they didn't put their CMO in the center of the boardroom, and in those days they weren't, in those days, out of the FTSE 100, there were only 3 CMOs on the boards. I got them all as mentors ultimately because I needed them as role models, but that's all there was. And I would be saying to the CEO, you know, you're whinging about lack of growth, you're whinging about, you know, the customer's not giving you what you need, etc., and you haven't got your CMO in the boardroom. So you haven't got your customer in the boardroom. So get your CMO in here, and I think you'll start to find that you do different things differently. And they would say, well, they do all of the fluffy stuff, right? This has changed, right? It has changed. But back then, that's what they would say. They do their colouring in department. They do all the fluffy stuff. You know, that's not really commercial. It's not really a growth engine. It has changed over years, but it used to drive me nuts. And here's the thing: when I decided that what I wanted to do was something philanthropic, it needed to be, so it was going to be a not-for-profit. It needed to be something that was about developing talent. And because it was philanthropic, it needed for me to have an entire industry support it. Then it was going to be in an industry or a function that could make the most radical change in the world. And I have always believed that change comes from influence. Influence comes from marketing, media, and advertising. So that the practitioners in marketing, media, and advertising can touch 7.5 billion people on the planet. We can make a young child with absolutely no money pick up a can of Coke in Uganda. You know, we can make somebody in a really poverty-stricken country spend a fortune on hair products.
Yeah. Then
we can also use that power to do some really good things. And I knew that there could therefore be a ripple effect of the learning. So to get that right, we had to ensure that we would have a program that would enable these people to be the best they could possibly be. And at this point, I wasn't thinking at the CMO level. We launched with the scholarship. We didn't launch the CMO program for another 4 years. But I believed that if we could get the talent as they were in moldable, the moldable stage, that they could go on and do amazing things. If we could show them, you know, what being an exceptional human looked like, being an excellent marketeer looks like, if we could show them that stuff, then there would be a wider ripple effect, not just within their teams, but to everyone they touch, which is all of their clients, customers, retailers, B2B, whatever it is. And that was how the Marketing Academy overarching strategy came to be. That and the help of a lot of people. I mean, I've got to say that as a headhunter, as you know, that black book thing is a little bit true. Obviously, it's much, much bigger than that. But, you know, I had people that were very, very close friends of mine that had worked with me as clients for years that were on the C-suite. And quite a few of those at that time were CMOs also. So I utilised that to do something really good. And that's how we created the Academy. So it took me about 18 months to kind of get over myself and work out what I was going to do with my life. And then it took another 18 months to launch it. And we launched in the middle of 2010, we launched at the beginning of 2010, which was right in the middle of the recession. And then about 18 months after that, I closed the search firm. And that was it. That was my path. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And I love every minute of it.
Well, I can see that. I can see that you're so passionate about it, and the impact, the positive impact you've had on the industry has been immense. Can I ask some advice? What advice would you give to some of these, some of the kind of the future stars, the marketers who are starting out in their career? Have you got any guidance that you'd give to them, the people who are appropriate for your scholarship program? You know, when they start. They're looking for mentors, they're looking for peers. What kind of basic advice would you offer to them?
So I've often said to people, because you can imagine we get thousands of applications for very few places. You know, we will give as much feedback as we can when we can. But the bottom line is anybody could create their own marketing academy experience as an individual if they really thought about their development strategically. The first mistake that most people make when they enter the workplace, or they're a few years, even when they're a few years in, is that they make the mistake of believing that the responsibility for their development and therefore their career sits with their employer.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Their employer is just borrowing them. And it isn't up to the employer. If you get a really good one, the employer will do that anyway. But still, you know, that employer will be having programs and courses that they will have brought in, and it will be, they'll put all of their people through that, all of the people at a certain level through that. And therefore, it won't be necessarily designed for what you as an individual need. So step one is to understand that you have way more control over your own development and career path than you believe you are, and it is your responsibility, nobody else's. Don't give the power of the responsibility for your career over to anybody else. It's you and you alone. So you have to do a little bit of that introspection. It has to do some self-reflection. You have to figure out what your spikes are, what your superpowers are.
Yeah.
And we're very strengths-based, so we prefer to develop the things that people are good about and ignore the things that they're shit at, whereas everybody's really good at thinking about what they're absolutely hopeless at, but not so good about thinking about what they're really good at. So ask for feedback around you. You know what, it sounds awkward, but once you start talking, you'll get asked for feedback of them too. You know, what things do you believe are my superpowers? What things do I do that make you feel, you know, happy? What things do I do that really impress you? Get some feedback, and then figure out how you make those strengths even stronger. And why I say you can create your own kind of marketing academy experience is because, in my view, you need a few different types of people within the community around you or your tribe, right? You need mentors, and they are people that know way more than you do and would tell you what to do if you were in their situation. That's what a mentor does. So you need a few of those, and the ideal mentors are ones that are not necessarily in your company or even in your function. They're just people that know a lot of stuff about what you want to get better at. So you need a few mentors. You need somebody who would act as a coach. Now, a coach is very different from a mentor, but a coach will enable you to think about what's going on for you and to come up with solutions for yourself. So a coach is somebody in your life who is a brilliant listener and who asks you questions. I mean, it could be your mum. It's unlikely because your mum will just be telling you what to do all the time. But, you know, you'll have somebody in your life who you come away from a conversation with thinking, oh my God, I think I talked more in that, you know, that session in that bar than they did, because they're curious about you and they ask questions about you and they're good listeners. So that's a coach. And then you need supporters, and that would be your mum. Because your supporters are the ones that really lift you up when you're feeling like you're down, right? And they can be amongst your friend group, but they can also be within your organization. So it might be the person who hired you. It might be somebody that you've worked with who may be a little bit senior than you, but work with on a project. It might just be the person whose shoulder you go on to cry. So that kind of person, that's another different type of person, right? That's the person you need in your tribe to lean on. And then the last is a champion, which is definitely your mother. But the champions are the people who are so passionate about you that they would talk about you in a positive way, even if you're not in the room. And they would be the ones that later on in your career, if a recruiter called them and said, I've got this role, they go, well, that's not for me, but I know exactly who you should speak to. That's a champion. So as you go through your career, if you think about the relationships that you hold around you in those four lenses, then you can create a bit of the magic that we provide in the academy, right? And then the peer group thing, well, that's just about developing relationships with your team and your agencies or your clients, depending on where you're sitting. You know, they can all act as your as your peer group. And then the learning bit, well, there is shit that's out there from a learning perspective. Don't wait for your company to supply it, right? Just be curious and then completely consume every podcast, conference, keynote around the things that make you curious. And that will build your knowledge base. So, you know, don't go to a marketing conference if you already believe that you know everything and anything you need about your craft. Go to a finance conference. Go and learn about what's happening in the finance sector. Go and look at a conference on AI. Go to a meeting of entrepreneurs. Go to a meeting of book readings that are going to be, you know, books on cutting edge leadership development or whatever. Yeah. So you can plan your own marketing academy experience or the scholarship that can go on for years, but you've just got to make that first choice, which is to take responsibility for your own learning and career. That would be it's quite a long tip, but that would be my biggest tip.
It's probably the best tip we've had on this series, to be honest, and thank you for that. And you make a really valid point about people understanding their strengths. And, you know, part of the work we do is helping people to realize, you know, what is it, you know, what does good look like for them, and how does that play to their strength? Yeah. Are there any particular personality profiling or tests or anything that you've used over the years that you would recommend to people, or what would your advice be for people to better understand their key strengths and weaknesses, I guess?
We're interested in the human being, right? We're interested in who they are. So it is hard for you to just figure that out on your own. Mm. You can think about to start to understand yourself. You need to be starting to think about what your purpose is in life, and to think about what the purpose is in life. We do a lot of this in the scholarship. You know, you've got to really work out those things that you're really passionate about and things that you're really, really good at. So you can sit down and work out what that is to you, what that means to you. But again, I go back to feedback, right? Asking for input, because there is likely to be many, many, many things that you're brilliant at that you may not even be aware of. And unless someone's told you, you'll never be aware of it. And unless you've asked for someone to tell you, you're never going to be made aware of it. So actually asking people, and it sounds really cringy, but oh my God, it is like the best thing you could possibly do. We even encourage our fellows to do it when we're going through the boardroom stuff and they're talking about the relationships I've got with different board members. You know, we're talking about asking others what their perception is of self. So, you know, when I'm at my best, how does that show up for you? You know, when I've made you smile, how does that show up for you? When I've done a good piece of work, how does that show up for you? What superpowers do you believe I have? And if you're constantly asking for feedback, you make people feel so comfortable that they'll start giving you the feedback unasked. So you have to go to the people around you in a 360, and not with a tool, not with an online tool, human face-to-face interaction. But, you know, even your friends, what is it that I do that makes you laugh? You know, what is it that happens when you have that reaction to me? What do you think I'm really good at? And they'll tell you. It'll take, if you've never asked them before, it'll take them a bit of time. But I don't think anybody can truly understand self without a combination of the introspection and the self-reflection and the external input that you get from the people around you who are likely to know you the best.
Thank you. My last question, Sherilyn, is you've expanded the Marketing Academy hugely now. So US, Asia-Pac. What other exciting things have you got on the cards for the next 2 years ahead? I know you got plans. I know.
Yeah. Well, we never really have planned anything. We've got here without planning any of it. It all really happened quite organically, although I kind of put something out to the universe and then usually something happens. The big opportunities for us, the virtual campus is a big opportunity. I mean, I want 1 million people on that. I want a totally free program that's a gift to the entire industry. Just got to figure out how to do that. The Asia-Pac thing could enable us to swing out quite wide. Because if you think about the countries that covers, there could be academies in each of those countries. And it's the first time we've launched in a region with the fellowship first, not the scholarship. So because we would have to have a different scholarship in Hong Kong, in India, in China, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Korea. So having fellows from across that entire region might unlock some potential to really go into Asia. The Middle East is very attractive to me. We've already got a bit of a community out of Dubai, so running one for the UAE, but based out of Dubai. America is probably big enough to have 2 scholarships running simultaneously on each coast. So we'll be exploring that, and the South Africa is appealing too. So who knows? We do it quite organically, but who knows when the opportunity appears, then we take that as a sign, and that will be the direction of travel for the steps. But ultimately, that's everywhere we want to be.
Oh, well, I wish you continued success with it. I mean, what you contribute to the to marketing is, well, just enormous, and thank you. I know everyone listening, they'll be flooding to the website now to sign up for the next intake.
Great. Well, you can register on the website now, and what that means is that you will be amongst the first to know when the program's open. So there is a place where you can just register your interest, and then we'll make sure that you get the stuff when you need to.
Excellent. And we'll publish the links when we post this live as well. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, and very best of luck.
Thank you very much.